Thank you. I already asked before, maybe you can introduce all our panel, but then he said I need to do my job. So then I will take from this part. Thank you that you came, because there's a lot of happening outside in exhibition and also stage that is next to us. But I will start with very short introduction of the panel, and then we will move to your question. So with me today on the stage, I have Lauma Muižniece, Director of Latvian Council of Science. Hi. You should do the applause at least 5 times. Stefano, Primatesta, Assistant Professor of Politecnico University Torino. Hans Christian Mathiesen, Vice President of Drone Programs at Skywatch. Zach Beecher, Director Partner of Scott Ventures. And Uģis Norītis, Undersecretary of State of Planning, Ministry of Defense of Latvia. That's it for applauses. Thank you so much. And then we will proceed to the questions. And I'm really thrilled about the first panel that we had with ministers. And then I thought about this conversation, and my first question would be about what you just heard, because there was a lot about the reality check where we are now, whole Europe, whole world, and it's a little bit questionable about the place of universities or research in this situation. So maybe you'd start with reflection, and then we will move to the questions. So please, Lauma.
Yeah, first of all, thank you for having me here. It's a pleasure to be here. Yes, so it's difficult to summarize what has been talked about, because so many important things have been mentioned. But what particularly caught my attention was a couple of things. So basically it was about things that we already kind of know, but it just really reassured some very crucial aspects. And it is, for one, that's a need for integration, need for priorities. And the need for, especially in the presentation from Ukraine, the need for constant involvement. So this is something that we have to remember, that when we achieve something, we cannot just stop there. We have to constantly evolve. And this is also how we capitalize on collaborations, and we have to have this integration, we have to have this coordination among ourselves, and this is how we can actually collaborate more efficiently. So basically, this is the main takeaway. But what is extremely important in what I heard was that the words engine of growth were mentioned when talking about defense expenditure. And of course, this is something that we really have to remember in Europe, that defense expenditure, defense R&D expenditure is a super multiplier, economic super multiplier. So this is the way how we can actually overcome some challenges that Europe has been having regarding commercializing its excellent research outputs, but I guess we'll talk about more of that later on in this discussion. But these are basically the main things for me.
Thank you. Stefano.
Okay, then thank you also for inviting me for this session. It's a pleasure. Just a brief comment about the previous panel. In my point of view, I'm completely agree on what they said, and in my point of view, we have to push on the innovation in this sector, especially because in the defense innovation should be continuous and not just a reactive activity for this scenario. And yeah, I think that also the university, as we will talk later, I think that can have a very interesting role in this part of the activity.
Great, thank you. Hans.
Well, thank you. And first of all, thank you for having me here and being the odd one out on the stage, because I'm a soldier. I never went to the university. I'm a practical guy. But now I'm in the commercial world, and the reality check seen from my perspective is that we need to get up in speed. The need for speed is there, And it's not that the universities and the industry is not talking together. I think that's actually working very, very well. And we are adapted to that the commercial world is moving fast. And we pick the brains and the talent from the universities. I think that's moving very well along. What we really need is for the governments and the militaries to start walking the talk about the importance of drone warfare. Because everybody is studying what's going on in Ukraine, but I don't see, and pardon my expression here, because it's not that I want to say they're not innovative, but I sense that the missing link here, at least from our experience in Skywatch, is that the Danish military and some of the other militaries we're working with, they're not moving at the same speed as the Ukrainian armed forces.
Thank you. Zah.
Well, I also would like to join the chorus of the panel in thanking you for the opportunity to be here and share my thoughts. I think we're confronting a pretty extraordinary moment, and there's this generational recognition of the challenge, but also of the opportunity that we have here. There's been a broad defense dividend that we've seen previously in research and development, catalyzing novel, groundbreaking, ultimately platform products that reinvent really the possible in the world. We've seen it with the internet, we've seen it with GPS, we've seen it with even mRNA vaccines. There's a great case study of how you climb the ladder from an academic idea to initial product to scalable outcomes. I think what the panel before emphasized is that we're now facing innovation at the speed of battle. And that's weighed differently, calculated differently, and that it's not just treasure, but ultimately blood, that you're looking to accelerate your ability to improve outcomes. So where is there opportunity here? I think the principle is actually around how do you better align research focus to commercial outcomes and ensure that you've got the capital stack to drive that to scale, not only to achieve the speed of need, but also to create mass and the quantity and quality of the technology that you're looking to drive.
Thank you. Uģis.
Yes, and thank you also for having me here, as I here represent the government circle in Triple Helix. But I think also the discussion before again emphasized how important in these circumstances the Triple Helix model, the most effective way to use it is, and the importance of speaking the same language. We have very different languages. We do have the scientist language. We do have the military language, and then we have the industry, we have the business language. And I think, again, as the previous speaker said before, the pace of change on the battlefield is so rapid, it's difficult, even on a lower pace, to have the same language. Everyone speaks the same language, but nowadays, when the situation on the battlefield, the requirements change so rapidly, it's even more important that the scientists understand what the business needs and the military can explain what is their operational art behind the requirements they ask. And I think that's one of the things I will probably take away from the first panel.
Thank you. Thank you for these points. I believe that's most important that we will now from this move to the questions. And if I can start with Hans, because you mentioned, so you have been there. So, and also from the previous panel and the video that we got from Ukraine, so they mentioned that industry should be there. It's not about that you can do something in the lab and then bring there and figure out maybe it works or not, because there's no time for this. What about universities? Because we are not there. We can just imagine about those questions or those challenges that has been faced. So should universities also be there to have the common language, common understanding of the real situation?
Yes, I cannot see why not, because they are training a lot of young generations in Ukraine. We are traveling in and out ourselves to Kiev more or less, if not monthly, then at least bi-monthly. We're working on it every single day with the end users of our technologies, and with the connectivity we have today, even though somewhere in Ukraine someone's trying to block something, it's still doable, and we have an ongoing 24/7 discussion with the end users of our technology. And as you can imagine, it is extremely valuable for a company like us to have this kind of more or less constant feedback on the performance of what we do. And when we work with universities, Aalborg University, Southern Danish University, Danish Technical University back in Denmark, they benefit from the dialogue we have. So we're sort of an instrument for the partners we have in Denmark. What I'm sort of missing is that we are very international by construct in the commercial world. We have, if not a global focus, then at least we have something that goes beyond Europe. Whereas I see that many universities, I know you have international corporations, but potentially we need to realign the efforts and include Ukraine more into this.
That's really amazing point. And then I would move to Stefano about this, what Hans just mentioned. So, like, let's take a drone coalition. So there's countries, governments who came together and have a clear aim, agenda, they work on it. For universities, we don't have such kind of platform regarding the research in defense and security. Should we have it?
Yeah, I think so, especially because I think that the main role of the university is to provide innovation. And then I think that, especially for this type of topic, university can work with the industry and also the government in order to develop some project in order to provide innovation. I think that, as also he said before, one of the main problems is the velocity, because industry and the universities, in my point of view, are going at two different velocities because of several reasons. And yeah, we need to provide a collaboration in order to also to speed up the work in the university in collaboration with the industry. For instance, as also said in the previous panel, for instance, simplifying bureaucracy and other activities that make the activities in the university very, very slow at the present. Yeah, but I think that university should be involved in this activity. Obviously, the main role of the university is to provide new technology, new methods, then something new that cannot be provided by the industry, and we are not the one that can provide scalability or to implement some products and other. Then I think that we should work not in the very short-term time, but in short, medium-term project.
Lauma, could you reflect on this? Our research institutions are ready to focus on some quite specific topic, and it's a little bit, I would not say it's against, it's just another way how we have used to work as a universities, like many topics, totally democracy about the research topic, what kind of research topics you are choosing, etc. Are we ready for this kind of changes?
Yeah, it's quite difficult, I have to admit. And I mean, this has been an issue for all of the universities and the industry as a whole. I mean, we hear it all the time that we have two different languages, two different speeds. But the thing is that universities have to, they really do have pressure on them, because they actually have to operate at two different speeds. Because we also have to acknowledge and remember that fundamental research is still a thing. And they also have to be the beacons of fundamental research and the front runners in that. And that operates at an absolutely different speed than applied research and experimental development. So it's all about the balance. And of course, it's difficult to maintain this balance. And a lot of things really depend on what the government support for that is. That's where also we come into the picture as funders of research, and depends on what instruments we have for bottom-up funding or top-down funding, because there have to be both. Because we also have to realize that many things will come come out of the fundamental research later on, but it just takes time and different speed. But of course, one thing that universities and other research institutions in general have to understand is that they do need to have sufficient skills skills not only in research but in also coordination, and to coordinate these two different speeds. And it takes a lot of practice, I guess, but I think we're on the right way.
Okay, that's good news. Zach, you have money, right? You are from an investor fund. So, would you buy this, that basically universities more focus together with industry, so that when the startup, come to your pitch sessions, I don't know how you operate, but still, if the university is behind this idea, so you buy it more, or with or without university?
No, it's a great question, right? Which is, I'm a venture capitalist, also a veteran and a soldier, so I've understood what that problem looks like from the ground up and the way that it's solved or not solved. And I think it's important as we think about academic institutions and the power that they have to both be points of development, both for talent, but also for products. And I really empathize with the tension there between foundational and applied research. And I think it actually comes back down to, what's the role that we want universities to play? And I think that what's so exciting about what we've been able to establish in the Western world is that they're open, they're collaborative, but they're extraordinarily competitive. And that they really are a place to define the art of the possible. And that dynamic about what is possible and stretching out to really capture what that could be is critically important. And some of the most promising research that's ultimately become billion-dollar companies, that's all tied back to university research. Google was started as a postdoc experiment at Stanford. Its first financing came from DARPA, which is a Department of Defense research institution. So there are real opportunities here. The way that we think about it is, how do you align interesting, comprehensive, and relevant research focused on core problem sets faced by both industry and government, and then think about the way that we can shape that product into something that is scalable, that drives outcomes, and ultimately drives capability and new possibilities by putting capital behind that product. So we have an example of invested in a company called Encharge. They're focused on building a new type of semiconductor that enables edge compute capability for dual-use application, backed by DARPA, but founded at Princeton University by one of their professors. So there is a tremendous amount of opportunity at the convergence here between the way that applied research is built out of foundational research and the way that that is tailored and productized to specific problems in the marketplace. So we always get excited if there's that product market fit.
Uģis, what about the market? How the ministry can help understand, also for innovators or research institutions altogether, what does the market need? Because I believe there's much of guessing about really what is needed, maybe now, maybe after 5-10 years. So what is the ministry role and maybe vision about how we can make this understanding even more like everyday task than it's now?
Thank you. I think it again goes back to the question that the end user or the ministry and the army, we have to understand where the technology is moving, what are the functionalities we will have in the language understandable for them. And they will understand the requirements. They will always translate the requirements they need to do their operational tasks. And I think coming back to the discussion we had before is that it is important and crucial for us to explain the functionalities, the operational functions we want to execute in the future. And then we need that someone, I think, and that's the mixture between the industry and the scientists. What are the needed fundamental research? What are the research and development programs to ensure that? From our side, of course, we have to allow, and what we are doing already nationally, and we will hopefully do much more in the future, is offering testing opportunities for those products, both for the scientists, but also for the industry. Because especially when it comes to purely military equipment, dedicated testing grounds in the air, in the land, and at the sea is crucial. Also do the experimentation, not only having a synthetic environment, but to use different science or industry products at different technology readiness levels during the exercises, to have the experimentation, to see what's working and not pushing them to the battlefield already, but to have that feel, the real feel of the equipment. And also do smaller things. I think hackathons also involve the military there and have the feedback. And I talked before the panel with the colleagues, and I said the most important thing, at least for us, and I think for many armies in the NATO countries, is still to have the passion about the science and the innovation in the armies. Because armies, by default, they will want equipment which has been battle tested, which has very clear maintenance and support mechanisms behind them, and the equipment they can really rely on. So I think the biggest thing is to have the mindset that accepting the failure, especially in the initial phases, that some of the equipment might not work, but doesn't mean we have to finish working on it. I think it takes time. It's not something the military has in their back of the head by default, and we are trying to actively push it. We want those champions in the army who are promoting the innovation, the industry, the new thinking, and then that's one of the things we will do much more actively. So two things: have that thing in our house, the mindset; other, offer more opportunities for the scientists and industry to use our facilities and our knowledge of operational art.
I want to just hop in and emphasize that point. I think as a venture capitalist, we think about how you test, you experiment, and then you iteratively develop to improve, to drive the outcomes that you want. And I think the ability to establish these types of testing centers, right, they establish a forum from which people can communicate and speak that common language. It's a place where you can converge across sectors. And then critically, you can actually set standards. And as you get involved in standard setting, it creates the common ground by which you're trying to incrementally or by step function significantly improve. So I think it also focuses on what we call a right to win. So you can't be everything to everyone, right? You can't boil the ocean. You could try, but you're often not going to be successful. What these testing centers enable you to do is say, what are my key priorities where I have to be successful? I'm going to create forums of dialogue and iterative improvement to focus on those and drive the outcomes that I want. As a VC, we look at that and we say, okay, that's where we can find our winners. And I think it's really important as a proving ground, really, for government, for researchers, for companies and industry to come together.
Thank you that you jump in. That's great. And then I will move to Hans, because also that was mentioned during the video from Minister of Defense in Ukraine. And that a little bit also changed my mind about our strategy, because he said that we need simple things. So it's not complex things. We are battling with the simple things. So it's not about the new high-tech something, but it's something that works and works in that moment. But again, if we look in the Europe strategy, and we have many strategies, not only for defense, but also for research, I believe we go more in this quite complex science, deep tech, so quite complex technologies in that direction. But it's not goes together with this reality that Ukraine is now. So where we should go to make a complex technologies for the future, or a little bit focusing on the simple technologies that is needed now?
No, I think we should have complex technologies, but they should work in a simple way, because that's really key. When I was a soldier, I really enjoyed the products and the weapon systems and the platforms that was easy to use, because for an army it means it's easy to train on. Then they can take care of the turnover of soldiers in war. It's higher than in peacetime, but it's important. Also on the maintenance sides, it needs to be simple. So even though we are in high tech, and we are doing something on the tactical edge, our strategy internally on the product is that it needs to be easy to use. And we shouldn't, there's lots of complex technologies behind it, but that should not necessarily be introduced to the end user, because that will only cause a lot of problems. I also, now you've given me the word, want to come back to really complaining about Skywatch and our own behavior, because I think we are talking, at least we have 4 nationalities on stage, And we tend to talk with the universities in Denmark, where potentially we should talk with a university here in Riga, because, different perspectives, different nationality also drives innovation. And there is, I think it's a brilliant idea, by the way, to reserve a corner for playing with the industry and doing all the testing. That is really what we also want to do, because armies are by nature conservative. That they need to be, because they need to fight tonight or tomorrow. So they need to be trained on the equipment they have. And you cannot take the entire army, or Navy for that matter, or Air Force, and ask them to go trial. So we need to reserve a corner for that. But the international perspective, because they are training nationally, but for an international fight. And the industry, we are working with innovation on a very national, domestic perspective, where we should potentially be more international. And my own government is drafting now a defense industry strategy. I know that at least 2 other Nordic countries are doing the same. Okay, are we building domestic industries, or are we trying to build a pan-European industry and build more strategic autonomy? By the way, your administration is currently assisting Europe in strategic autonomy, because there is a push now for us to do more ourselves. But we cannot start that with a domestic national approach. We need, I think, by design, to think international, regional. So instead of having a Danish defense industrial strategy, potentially we should have a Nordic, Baltic, Northern European, pan-European defense industry strategy. That was a lot of words, I know, sorry.
No, that's extremely important, because, as I mentioned before, so there's many strategies, different way of strategies. There's many questions about those points where they go together and what exactly we need to do. Mm-hmm. As Lauma mentioned, for the universities, there's so much pressure at the moment, because we need to do everything in the same time. So first of all, you need to be excellent in the science, but you need to do also apply research for the industry. You need to be faster, stronger, and etc. And then there's many other documents that we need to do. So, Lauma, what we should do? Because again, I believe this urgent feeling that we have in university, and it's there, because we really feel we have a lot of collaboration with Ukrainian universities, and we're trying to do our best, but still we haven't got the feeling that we do enough. So, and I believe that there's the same feeling in other universities. So what would be our first step, so that we got the feeling that we are on the right way, so that we not only do our main business, so the research and prospective research, but also that we help our neighbors and we are on the right path?
Yeah, so I would say that, as I already mentioned, but still it's quite crucial to have the coordination skill, because it's very important to understand your capabilities, to map out your capabilities and what you already have, and how you can contribute to the needs of the others. But in this case, I would say that this, of course, lies in the responsibility of the universities. So development of their skills and support mechanisms within, institutional support mechanisms within the university, establishing the right mindset and everything that was already mentioned, like to combat the 2 different languages and speeds. But I think more importantly, the question actually lies with the supportive ecosystem, the rest of the triple helix model, and most importantly, governments. And those who define different kind of funding mechanisms, because I think it's really important to really understand that we like to overcomplicate things, and I would say that's one of the pitfalls that we have, and this is one of the lessons I hope we have learned, that Europe likes to complicate things, not only in research, but especially when it comes to funding and investments. And this has been mentioned multiple times, that we have to make investments more simple, more understandable, the mechanisms, how they work, and to whom they are accessible to. I think that's one of the reasons why European paradox, I really love this term, it was, I think, coined in the early 2000s or something. So this means that Europe has excellent research outputs, but rather lackluster success in commercialization of these outputs. And I mean, it was coined like 25 years ago, but it's still a thing. We know it all too well. So I think it comes down to really understanding how we can make things easier, and also that same applies to universities as well. You have to think about at the fundamentals, like how can we help, what kind of resources we have, and how we can and to whom we should coordinate the application of these resources.
Okay, finally, we are talking about funding. This is the, very important topic. And I will then proceed to Uģis about the funding, because the ministry have quite many different support mechanisms. What is the first lessons that you have learned regarding the funding and the outcomes, and what we miss at the moment?
So first of all, we are, from the Ministry of Defense perspective, planning to invest much more, and we are already doing that when it comes to innovation, at least from our side. And I told you, the thing we try to cover is mostly things we could call pure military, not dual use, because EU still has many offers when it comes to science and innovation for dual use products, but we are trying to cover the gap which concerns the military. So it concerns the different grant programs. We are also supporting the dedicated state research program for defense, where we work actively with the scientists and council. Then we also have a dedicated R&D program where we are investing much more resources dedicated, especially the last call we had was for the drone and anti-drone systems. So the lesson, I can't say learned, but identified, I think we really try to capture and work with, is that we have to understand that those technologies are still evolving, and we, as I told before, you can't really talk about the failure when it comes to the public financing. That's something that doesn't go together by default. No one is ready to spend the public funding to say, we will fail. And that's not what we are going for, but we have to still have that idea behind us that it might not work. The end product we might not buy. It doesn't mean that everything which has been invested upon that is useless. And that can be used for the next research and the next science program and all of that. I think that's one of the lessons we try to be very pragmatic about, is that not everything will finish with the F-35 fighter jet. That's where it is, especially for us. Nationally, we have strong science institutions, we have great industry, but still, I think the issue, of course, always is when it comes from the science to the industry, is the local consumption, so to say. We have small armed forces. We will never be able to say in the local industry, which will be able only to work with the local army. So we have to have that export mindset again. The product has to be competitive throughout Europe and the world. And that's one of the things we also try to emphasize, is that when the scientist comes to us and they offer something to us, we try to explain that they should also look broader. What is needed in the market, also outside Latvia and also Baltic states. And the same for the industry. Is that product something that has the advantage to be competitive outside as well, especially when it comes to the R&D products? And I thought these are two things when it comes to the financing, is of course to invest more, to be ready for the failure, but also to explain that, and being honest, both with the scientists and the industry, you can't really rely on us to make a great business model or the great science model. You have to look broader, and we will incentivize you, we'll give you many supporting mechanisms, but it's still in your hands. You have to look for that. We can't carry you to the very end.
Thank you. Zach, what we can do about this, that basically funding goes together with no for failures, and what failure really means in the end of the day. From your perspective, what we should do to make this failure or risk tolerance even higher, so that everyone accept that it's not a failure, just the lessons learned, and that we can take out of it something and move forward?
So it depends on what context, right? So as a VC, if someone's pitching me and they're saying, we're excited because we're going to fail, we're probably not going to invest, right? So I think the challenge is when we talk about failure, what do we really mean? What we mean is, did we set out and put the product into play in the exact way that we thought? And very rarely does any startup scale exactly in the way that they thought. The best entrepreneurs, the best researchers can pivot and find value and apply that value, and they iterate that forward to drive that outcome. That iterative process is core here, right? It's the same with the research process. It's the same idea of I put a hypothesis to test, I apply it, I see the results, I get better when I apply it the next time. You know, I think we've hit on a really important point here, though, which is this idea that defense tech as a technology vertical is challenging in terms of the financing model, because it is a binary outcome, right? It's a 0 or 1. You get the contract or you fail to get the contract. And so what we look for are dual-use technologies. And we're very early stage investor. We're often the first institutional check-in to founders, either coming out of universities or coming to market with a product for the first time. But we look for that kind of the ability to be a two-sport athlete, right? The ability to both play football, but also run track. And that's a hard thing to do. And that's why you got to be very selective in the entrepreneurs that you back. You want to identify those folks that can pivot, that can iterate, that can think about value in a more expanded way. But I want to come back to the point about, you know, government's role in this funding mechanism. I think what government has the opportunity to do is to serve as a signal, really, to open the door for a marketplace and give confidence. You know, in the US, we are overly descriptive of a grant as non-dilutive financing, which is a nice way of saying you can get the money from the government to experiment on a particular product idea that they approve of. It's about a $3 billion program called the Small Business Innovation Research Grants. So when you think about the fact that the US Department of Defense is around $997 billion in operating budget, it's a really small budget. Now, given scope, size, relative numbers here, it's a big program. $3 billion is no small program. But the amount of entrepreneurs who have confidence to care about dual-use technology because they can pursue those dollars is significant. And so government has an ability to drive an outsized interest in particular sectors, align interest in particular problem sets that they have, and drive very driven entrepreneurs or researchers to look at those areas. So we think that collaboration is essential. We think it's critically important. And the more entrepreneurs solving this means you get better quality at the other side. And the more folks in the space, the more attention, the better the outcomes. So we think about iterating. We think about iterating through confidence. That confidence comes out of knowing that you've got dollars to back those ideas, or euros in this case.
I will add one more question to you. Do you think there's enough private capital in defense tech at the moment?
So in the US alone last year, this went from a sector that was a backwater 10 years ago. I think if you had said defense tech or dual-use tech, most people would have looked at you cross-eyed. Last year in the United States, about $131 billion of private capital went into dual-use or defense technology. That's pretty extraordinary when you think about it from the full capital stack. So what does that mean? Does it mean that there's real opportunity here? Does it mean that there's a bit of a bubble? I think the challenge is ensuring that you have smart capital working towards the right ends. There's about 96 different venture capital funds in the United States focused on this topic. That is a high watermark from the about 20 or so that were focused on this before. Every market comes down to the people, the products, the problems, and the process. This is a very specific type of market, right? The European Union has its own challenges in its procurement cycle. Every country in NATO has a different procurement cycle, even if they're on certain shared principles. The US and all of our services have their own procurement policies. Those are all dynamics that are challenges. I think we always want more private capital because it's about the private capital stack, and the government cannot do this alone. If the government's picking winners, we think that that's a bridge too far. But when you think about early research, government plays a role. Initial problem sizing, government plays the initial capital role. And then as they begin to get that escape velocity into initial product, that's where the private capital stack picks up. And so carrying that all the way through and then ultimately to a scaled production contract, which is the ultimate goal, it comes back to government. And so there's a delicate dance that takes place here between the private and the public sector. And I think every nation right now is trying to put the screws in to figure out what the right balance is. And I think we have to be open-minded, we have to be competitive, and we have to be extraordinarily results-driven to drive the right type of balance to drive the outcomes that we want. And I think the Ukrainians deserve a lot of credit for having thought about this in a very new and novel way in driving the right capabilities and decision-making down to the lower points of the Ukrainian army to fulfill the capability development that they need at that tactical edge. A lot of hot air from me. You can tell I'm passionate about this topic. Would love to chat about it, but I think universities, at the end of the day, they are the kind of, to use an American phrase, the field of dreams. It's where you have the opportunity to think about the art of the possible, conceive of what you can do, and then do that standard setting so that you can baseline across an industry, experiment, iterate, improve, and drive the right types of product outcomes that you want.
Thank you. Stefano, also reflect a little bit on what we heard about different kind of instruments that it's already there regarding the funding. What about the choice? Because the researchers can make the choice. So basically we talk about application of the research, why it's defense or it's space or it's any other topic. How you would describe at the moment how the researchers make those decisions? Are they going to EDF if we talk about like international-wise funding or some national funding? So yeah, maybe you can reflect on that.
Yeah, it's a very good question. About the choice on the topic, to be honest, depends on the funding opportunities that we have. For instance, in Italy, at the present, I'm following several projects. All of these projects are on civil applications, not because I don't want to work on the military sector, but because it is more easier to get access to some projects to that type of funding. To be honest, I worked only once on a military project that was based on a research plan at the national level that is called PNRM, that is the National Plan of Military Research. And then, to be honest, it is more difficult to apply to this type of project. It is not very easy that your proposal it is accepted, and also these are short-term projects of just 1 year of project in which you have to work with a company and then developing a proof of concept that is, let's say, a very good objective of this type of project, but after that there's nothing else. I think that we need to define some new initiatives. I think that, as said before, we should think about collaboration not at the national level, but at the European level, at least, and then also enable this type of project for the dual use, I think, especially because we have to think also how new technology can be applied in both sectors, and I think that it helps also in order to use new technologies also for the civil applications, and also that can be very useful also to open a new technology to the market.
Thank you. Hans, how you would describe at the moment the funding opportunities for the industry in university collaboration in defense sector?
Well, speaking from our experience, being an order finance company, and not really with a big investment currently from our owners, it can be done as long as you have the contracts. Coming back to the importance of having relationships with the states, which are the customers. So it's, I think in terms of trials, as you mentioned, risk mitigation, because we cannot have too much taxpayers' money wasted, obviously, but you can do with minimizing, sort of the cap on the initial programs. That is one way to do it, because I totally agree, the experience is not lost in any way, it's a gained experience. It could be that that product even could evolve into something that could scale into a big size program. Coming back to you, Zach, also, it's correct that you have the United States, and it's very difficult to penetrate into a program with the Department of Defense. We are currently doing it. Not going to succeed this year, but it could be. It's a big reward on the other side. In Europe, we're doing it in each country. Coming back to my point before, we simply need to figure out a way to work at speed that is much faster than what the European Defence Fund is doing. And if you look at the characteristics of small and medium-sized enterprises, and especially startups, they don't have 2 men or women that can do all the documentation and bureaucracy that is needed to be part of such a program. I talked to one of the Latvian partners here yesterday, because they had recently won funding from an EDF project. And they set aside 2 men, 2 employees to do the documentation. It's basically not the way to fast forward product development and market new products. It's a funding mechanism, yes, but we need private equity to supplement that. And I think it is there. In Denmark, we also now, the government has sort of released and asked the pension funds to begin investing also in defense technologies. So I see a lot of that is emerging right now. And I think this is the right approach. I'm sure we'll find a way. I think we need to work smarter. We once had a NATO Sec Gen that talked about smart defense. Basically, his ideas is still not the worst. That we cannot role specialize because we are individual nations, but we need to find a way in industries to reinforce each other's positions of strength instead of trying to mirror everything ourselves. Because at the end of the day, when the demand from the European unfortunate war in Ukraine is over, a lot of the companies that is doing remarkable work and achievements in the drone industry right now and the counter-drone industry will suffocate because there is no air in the room, there is not enough business for them. As a defense industry company, the domestic market is simply not enough. We cannot live without them, but we cannot live off them. So we need to export our products. And therefore we need, I think, support from the governments that they talk to each other. So instead of we do it, at program level, that we demand on every supplier to Danish defense that they put contracts worth of something into Danish industry. No, not really. It makes not a lot of sense. It just increases the price of the products for the Danish customer. Instead, we should work at the national level to say, if we are buying Patrias from Finland or CV90s from Sweden, then you should go look for something in Danish defense. And if they can't find anything in the Danish defense industry, potentially there's something else they can do. So we work together at the national levels. And also, again, with the universities, because I think that will follow. Yeah. So because we have a need for all the ideas that is coming out of the whatever activities going on. And we have in Denmark a possibility to keep our IP when we work together with the universities and also what we achieve together. And that's very important.
Thank you. As we have only 1 minute, then I would ask all the panelists to share one task for tomorrow we can do to make this collaboration even better. Who wants to start? I will start with Lauma because she's smiling.
Right, that reminds me not to ever smile again. Okay, so it's quite tough, but a very good question though, because it's easier to talk, but just to point out one thing, I would say one thing that we have to really understand, and everything else I think derives from that, is that investments in R&D and investments in defense are not mutually exclusive. They have to be one at some point, and that's like the starting point. And then we can think about how to invest and what to invest, but we have to understand that investing in defense has to go through R&D. They don't have to be exclusive.
Thank you. Anna?
Okay, just in one sentence. Yeah, I think that Europe has the great potential to speed up on the innovation. However, I think that we are already in late, and I think that we need both universities, industries, and the government need to speak each other at the same table in order to understand which are the different needs and requirements.
Yeah, I think I'll eat my own medicine and go back home and try to argue the necessity for us to look for ideas outside our national playground, because we could ourselves both find commercial technology partners, which is not Danish, and we could also work with universities that are not Danish.
Thank you.
I think for us, the interest is in trying to find those next generation technologies that are being tested, developed, and ultimately hoping to transition to a product. We'd love to see where there's opportunity and where we can create allied advantage here in Europe.
Yeah, from my side, I would just say that we still have to work on that wartime mindset we talk about. We are always happy to listen to our Ukrainian friends and allies, how they are fighting on that. I think we're still not there. I think we're happy to listen to them, but it's difficult to embrace that mindset without being in that situation. So we are very fortunate to be in that situation, to think about it, not to see it every day. So I think we still have to work on that. And when it comes to the pace of innovation, when it comes to readiness to accept the failure, I think that's one thing we still have to work actively on.
Thank you. There's some questions.
Yeah, thank you, Liene, and thank you, panelists. Yeah, and we'll continue with Mr. Norītis. There's a question for you. Thank you. Is China's role supply chains, for example, electronic components and batteries, a major problem for Latvian defense tech companies, and what is the government doing to help reduce this reliance?
I think that's the challenge not only for the Latvian companies, and then that's a question to the Latvian companies, of course, are they experiencing big issues or not? I think it's nothing new that, of course, many of the components do come from China for a reason, not that because they're made in China, because they're much cheaper. I think the US and the European market is still not there to compete for many of the materials. What we are at least trying to do is to push the industry when they do offer the products for the Latvian armed forces, that most of it, or the majority, and they actually get most points if they are having more components from the European and the US market. That's the way we try to incentivize. And what comes with that, of course, we have to accept the pricing. It is more expensive, but then at least we build the European supply chain, we build the national supply chain. So in the future, eventually, we will be there that hopefully it's competitive with the Chinese components, but at least we have better advantage in a certain extent.
Thank you, Mr. Norītis. Question for Mr. Beecher. How interested are USA defense tech and VCs in leading investments in European defense tech companies? We have the example of General Catalyst and Helsing, but it seems like an outlier.
Yeah, it's a great question. So we think that this presents a generational opportunity, right? If you look at we talked about the capital stack, but if you look at the investments that the European Union has made, 800 million recently in the EDB, focus around activating the NATO Innovation Fund and driving alternative investments into standing up these private companies and driving them to scale, there's enormous opportunity, which I will tell you from a personal anecdote. I was speaking in Italy a couple of years ago, and I was called some choice names about the American desire to always enter national security into the innovation conversation. So it's quite a leap we've made just in the last 2 years on this interest in dual-use tech. We're very proud to look across all of our allied partners to identify really promising startups. We just announced our first European-based investment actually 2 weeks ago, which is a UK-based company called Valerian, focused on data sovereignty and compartmentalization, which is a critical issue for secure operations, both for enterprise, but also for government. So we're very eager to look across all of our allied partners and try to find deal flow. And if you're a founder, please come find me.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Beecher. And now is a question for the whole panel. Oh, thank you. What are the key areas and roles that research institutes can contribute in development of unmanned technologies? So, please, anyone? Lauma?
Yeah, well, I can
please.
begin. We have obviously on our product we have always development, and there's certain areas and competences we don't have in the company, and there we reach out to universities simply to see if they have expertise in that field, and if we can design a program where it benefits us and it also benefits what the universities are doing. Obviously, I cannot comment in detail on what those activities are. But I could say in more generic terms, it's about antenna technology, which is developing at very fast, but also for drones, because every antenna sticking out of a fuselage is actually a drag, and it's all about in the drone world to have as much airtime as you can. So if you could integrate those antennas into part of the fuselage and also making it even tougher to jam, then you are really come a long way. So these are the kind of things that we are talking with universities about, not for marketing tomorrow, but somewhat down the line.
Thank you, Mr. Mathiesen. Anyone? The same question, please?
Yeah, sure. If I can add something, I think that especially in the drone community, there are several challenges from the research point of view. The safe communication is one of these, but also some topics that should be developed and also on which we are working on is the autonomous navigation of drone in GPS-denied environment, management of the fleet, management and teaming. These are topics that, probably, as said also before, is something that there's no need today. But I think that's something that should be investigated in order to be ready when we need for these topics tomorrow.
Thank you, Mr. Primatesta. Anyone else? Okay, we have a space for a few more. Further on, please, when you submit your questions, please note to whom you are asking, whether it's the whole panel or someone directly. So, what would be the best vector to create partnerships between Ukrainian military academia and alliance universities? Mr. Beecher?
I think it's really around trying to find the right type of problem. So it all starts with the problem. If you can focus and drive scope around a core issue where you've got depth of knowledge at one of the universities, you have entrepreneurs who are focused on the challenge, and you have government who have identified it as a priority, you can really create the grounds for something pretty extraordinary. The most successful outcomes have been where you have shared cause, you have shared purpose, and you have a clear idea in terms of your expectations of what you are aiming to solve together. So, I come back to the test beds as these opportunities. We know what the challenges are that the Ukrainians are facing, right? They've been very clear about that. One of the major issues has been about counter-UAS. One of the major issues is specifically around 5G band. How do you drive secure command and control of those systems? Well, Latvia has a very unique opportunity using its historical track record here and efforts along with NATO to continue to scale those efforts and become that center of excellence within Europe and for our Ukrainian partners.
Thank you. Anyone? Same question?
Yeah, just chipping on that, I think Zach made a good point. I think it is very much about what we are witnessing in Ukraine, of course, is the importance of the electronic warfare, not only the warfare, but the importance of an electromagnetic spectrum in the future. And I think that's one of the things we can, of course, take away from the battlefield, see the real experience, but also the question when it comes to solutions to that. And I think Zach made a great point about being very specific on the specific problem, because we very often tend to take the lessons identified, I would skip saying learned, lessons identified from Ukraine very broadly. I think we do it too broadly. I think the war is so sophisticated, it's so well documented that we kind of try to generalize it, make it way too broad to solve any of that. I think we try to jump on one of the things and try to solve it, not seeing the bigger picture, and that we are not being specific about solutions we can actually do from the science and the industry perspective.
Thank you, Mr. Norītis. Lauma?
Yes, I would just like to kind of echo what my colleague just mentioned, is that more than one colleague just mentioned that basically everything starts with the problem, and I think we should really approach defense expenditure and defense R&D expenditure through mission-oriented approach and think about like general missions of what we would like to achieve, and then we can look and see who can contribute to what and which part they can play. And I just don't mean just in the scope of one country, but multiple countries, because we have different capabilities and different strong points, and I think that this is the right way how we should start think about it, through mission-oriented policies.
Thank you, Ms. Muižniece, and that will be about it for the stage questioning right now.